Alright, so we're getting ready to fly the Eagle once again. I've made some changes in the analog camera sides to hopefully get rid of that weird radioactive green hue that we saw. I actually made another quick flight yesterday. I'll put up a quick little screen grab right now just to show you what that looked like. It was really bad on a sunny day, but as you can see, we're not blessed with sunny conditions again today. It's pretty heavy overcast. Looks fine. Now I guess we'll have to wait till the sun comes out again to see if it looks better then, and if not, we'll revisit it. So as for the flight today, I'm gonna do a couple of little things, test some more changes. We're gonna go ahead and get in the air right now with an armed, and we'll start taxiing out to the runway. I need me some little taxiway markers or something out here, so that I know when I'm far enough out, close to the center of the runway, rather than just trying to guess from on the ground level here. Alright, so we should be pretty close. We're not exactly lined up on the runway, but we're close enough. So we're going to go ahead and switch to fly-by-wire and get in the air. And then I'll talk about some of the changes I made and some of the things that we're going to test. Everything seems to be flying fine right now. Everything's good. Feels good. The ground's kind of dark up ahead though. I don't like that. And it's probably a result of some of the changes I made in the camera, as far as brightness and contrast and color gain and hue and all that. So maybe I'll need to tweak it again later. But at least that weird green sky is gone. Alright, so some of the things we want to test. I want to test in cruise. I've actually set it up to run at a slower airspeed and throttle for a more efficient cruise, rather than burning 6 or 7 ounce, where we're going to pull a little bit higher throttle in the curve, in the turn here. But you'll see once we level out and fly straight and level, it should drop to, I think if I remember right, my target airspeed is around 33 miles per hour. And my throttle should land close to about 33%. And that's based on some of the quick testing I did on a quick flight yesterday, like I said. And that should give me a more efficient cruise at less than 6 or 7 amps. Now you can see it is kind of surging the throttle a little bit. That's another thing too. I use the TCS throttle dampening parameter to add a bit of dampening to that throttle control loop to smooth out some of that surging. Little bird flying by, check us out. See what we're doing. It is still surging a little bit as it manages airspeed and altitude, but it is doing a good job of managing both. And you can see right now we are sitting right pretty well on our target airspeed of 33%. We have a nice smooth cruise. It is still kind of surging a little bit as it corrects for things, and we don't have a lot of wind today. You can see my wind speed estimate is down to 1.9 mile per hour tailwind right now. And if we point the nose back to the north, we should see that as a headwind. Actually, it hasn't changed direction. But that's another thing I want to revisit and address on this flight today. I want to recalibrate the airspeed sensor. It's like I mentioned, I pinned a comment on the last video where I said that the auxiliary function to enable and disable airspeed auto cal didn't seem to be working right. That was totally user error and my fault. What I had actually done was I had the parameter to manually enable it turned on, which was, I had done that after the previous flight. I intended to calibrate the airspeed sensor on the next flight, so I had set that parameter just to manually enable it all the time, and then I forgot about it in the 2 weeks that I didn't fly. When I revisited everything and came back ready to fly, I set up that auxiliary function on a switch, but that parameter was overriding it, just keeping it enabled all the time. So what we're going to do right now I'm going to switch this over to return to launch just to allow it to loiter the rally point, which is just ahead here. We should get on a course to rally it here in just a second. And while it's doing that, we're going to enable that airspeed calibration, which should be working now because I still have it set up on the aux function and the parameter is not set to keep it on all the time. So we'll go ahead and enable that now.
Airspeed.
And I just want to let it loiter right here for a bit and calibrate that airspeed, which is best done loitering in a fixed position with a bit of wind, which is kind of what we have today. Not a lot of wind, but we do have a little bit of wind. Should be enough to let it get a good read and calibrate. And this also gives me an opportunity to make sure it's able to navigate and fly in a turn like this and maintain altitude without getting too slow and stalling, since I lowered my cruise throttle and cruise speed. And everything does still seem to be fine. Now I haven't noticed the ratio update yet on the airspeed calibration, but it's probably because it was already pretty close to being calibrated anyway, because I did do that full flight with it manually enabled during the full flight. The only reason I wanted to recalibrate is just to make sure, and there we go, we have a ratio change there. It's typically you want to calibrate it when you're flying in a circle like this and not long straight stretches like we had done previously. Kind of curious what that vehicle is out there. It looks like an 18-wheeler with a trailer. Probably a sugarcane truck, because they are getting ready to cut all the sugarcane fields around here. They were actually burning one earlier today. I was going to fly this morning, but it was so thick smoke all around I wasn't able to get in the air. But yeah, that's either a sugarcane truck or a gravel truck hauling gravel out to the sugarcane farmers' loading sites. It's kind of hard to tell from up here. Maybe in the HD feed we'll be able to see it. But speaking of the HD feed, I have made some more changes in the HD camera as well, as far as contrast and exposure, compensation, and saturation. Just trying to get it to look a little bit better natively straight from the camera without having to do as many tweaks and filters and color corrections in my editing software later to get it to look better. But so far, this Hybrid 1 that I have flying on here, I haven't been very impressed with it, either the HD recording quality or the analog side. I know my original Hybrid 1 that's on my Reptile Dragon V2, I actually got it down and powered it up just to take a look and see if maybe I was remembering it better than it really was. I got it down and powered it up yesterday and just kind of compared the two, and that original Hybrid camera looks a lot better than this one. Both the HD recording and the analog side. And I compared the settings in the analog camera and they were identical. They were both on defaults. I hadn't changed anything in the original one, and this one was still on defaults. But for some reason it just doesn't look as good. Noticing that little black spot up there in the clouds. Kind of curious what that is. I guess it's just a little black spot in the clouds. But anyway, if this camera doesn't, if I can eventually sort it out with changing settings and things like that, then I'll probably eventually switch it over to the Hybrid 2 that I do have, which was my intention anyway. I wanted to put the Hybrid 2 on here from the start, but like I mentioned in the last video, I ended up getting a working Hybrid 1 here on hand first, so that's what I went with. But anyway, I'll mess around with it some more, and if I can't ever straighten it out on here, I'll swap it out and see if the Hybrid 2 looks better. I mean, the image quality is fine. It's just the colors and hue and everything is all weird on both the HD and the analog camera. The analog camera was looking all toxic green, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video. But now that seems to be corrected now. But I might just be able to tweak some of the settings a little bit, maybe bump the brightness back up a little. So I did lower it some because the camera did seem to be a little bit too bright to me. So I kind of lowered that a little bit. Maybe I went too far. probably spend a little bit of time trying to correct everything before I give up on it and pull it off of the airplane. But even if I do, I'll try to get it sorted out later. As far as the HD side though, it's looks pretty decent and sharp, and there's no lines and everything and coding artifacts in the video like I had with the old camera that was on here, which was the Turtle V2 if I remember right. I think it was a Turtle, I'm not even sure. It's one of the older split style cameras from either Caddx or Foxeer. I don't think it was a Foxeer mix. I'm pretty sure it was a Caddx Turtle V2 that I flew on here briefly. But anyway, the airspeed calibration seems to be pretty spot on, pretty good. So I'm actually going to disable that now, and we'll go back to cruise.
Fly-by-wire A.
Or
Cruise.
into the wrong flight mode there. But now I want to fly downwind a ways a bit, and then I want to fly back upwind and see if that changes. I'm actually kind of hearing a helicopter right now. I think it's a helicopter. It could be another vehicle on the highway, but I just want to kind of look around, scan the horizon, make sure there's no helicopters coming up on me, because that would be bad. So I'm actually going to turn back upwind right now, and I want to see if that wind direction changes. I noticed it was changing while I was loitering, but it doesn't seem to be changing here. And maybe it's just because it's such a low wind, it's not really sure what direction it's coming from. Which, if that's the case, it wouldn't be good for airspeed calibration. But we can always recalibrate it on another flight. I keep looking at that dark spot up there, wondering if that was the helicopter I'm hearing, because I do think it's a helicopter right here. I'm just not sure where he's at. Actually, I do see him looking out the window, so he's far away from us. If we turn back this direction, he should be over these woods right out here. Now, I can't see it in the analog feed. Maybe we'll be able to see it in the HD feed, but he's kind of out this direction, flying left to right in the FPV view right now. So we're kind of flying towards him. He should be off in that direction by now. So we're going to stay over here and mind our business and do our thing. That's the only thing when you got a low ceiling like this, the low flying aircraft like that, the helicopters, they do typically tend to fly lower, and we're flying midday right now. Normally I fly late in the evening, but it's currently, well, let's say midday, it's like 3:30 p.m. right now, when I do tend to see a little bit more air traffic out here. And in that case, I just do my part to stay clear of it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way the cruise performance now, flying in cruise mode like this. Everything seems to be good. We're flying a lot more efficient now, and we've actually been flying for 12 minutes and used 1200 milliamp hours. So we should be able to get probably 30 minutes out of it. I might even make that a goal of this flight. I might just kind of cruise around out here and try to fly somewhat efficiently and see if we can get 30 minutes out of it in cruise mode. And that's counting, you know, the first portion of this flight that you've already seen. That's going to factor into it. Some of that's not as efficient as it could have been, but it's a normal flight, so I wouldn't really consider that bad for a realistic test to see how long the airplane will fly. But it's definitely cruising at a lower amp draw and lower airspeed and more efficiently. And if you look at that efficiency number there, we're sitting on about 130 milliamp hours per mile. Well, now it's going up some, quite a bit actually. I guess it was while it had to throttle down a bit. So yeah, the low end seems to be around 130, the high end about 170, let's say about 150 milliamp hours per mile, which is a big improvement over what it was, because it was sitting above 200 milliamp hours per mile previously. So we're definitely flying more efficiently with this configuration than we were previously. I still think I can get it to be a little bit better if I maybe smooth out some of that little bit of throttle surging, but again, that is just the ArduPilot doing its thing to manage altitude and airspeed. And you can adjust the weight over whether it uses more throttle or more pitch to control altitude. And I'm not sure. I know there's some things you can set that balance. I think it's kind of like a 50-50 split by default on how it controls airspeed and altitude using pitch and throttle. And I know there's some parameters to play around with that. They're considered more advanced parameters, and I may look into that later just to see if I can dial it in a little bit closer to perfect. But we're 100% good enough in the current configuration. Everything seems to be working fine. Yeah, you see we have a little bit more wind speed showing up right now, and as we turn into it, that arrow is changing direction as it should. So I guess it not changing previously was just because the airspeed, though the wind speed was so low it didn't really know what direction it was from. Think of like a windsock just hanging pointing at the ground. I guess it wasn't really reading a direction because it wasn't reading much wind speed. But speaking of the wind speed, I did change the icon down there on the lower right corner of my OSD. I have a little kind of graphic for wind speed now rather than the little WDSP that I had there before. I was just kind of playing around with some of the fonts and did that. I thought it looked better. On my previous video I mentioned the fonts like that, and I said if anybody was interested, just let me know and I would either explain how to do it or share the file. And one guy, I'm sorry I don't remember your name right now, but I may overlay it on the screen when I edit this video if I remember. But I got one comment that asked for me to share the font file. So once I get it all squared away, I mean, it's pretty well, I'm happy with it right now. But there are some elements that I didn't change for like kilometers and meters and stuff like that I don't use. I only have the imperial units all set up to my liking right now. But I'll still share it anyway. If I remember right, I'll put a link below this video in the video description for the font file. And just a brief explanation on what to do with it. I mean, literally you just stick it in the root of the SD card, name it font 0, font 1, font 2, whatever, I think up to whatever the 5 default fonts are. So it should be like 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 if I remember right. And then you just select the corresponding font in your setup in Mission Planner, and it will just load that font. If the font file is present on the SD card, it will load it from there rather than the one baked into the firmware on the flight controller. That's actually a feature that was added once they dropped the extra fonts from the F4, or well, not necessarily F4, but from the 1 megabyte flight controllers. They added that, if I remember right, it was around 4.0, 4.1, something like that. They added that ability to load fonts from the SD card just to enable you to use all of the fonts on the 1 megabyte boards once they ran out of a room. So they deleted the extra fonts, and the only one by default baked into the firmware on the 1 megabyte boards is the font 0, the default font. So to run the extra fonts, you had to load them on the SD card. So in doing so, that's actually functional on all of your flight controllers. So even this one, being an F765 WSE, it has all of the fonts baked into the firmware. I can select any one of them, but I'm still able to load a custom font onto the root of the SD card and just pick it up from there, which is so quick and easy and convenient to do custom fonts. So I like it. I like that. And if it wasn't for that, I would probably never looked into making this custom font, because to use it with older RGplane firmware without being able to load them from the SD card, you would have to actually compile the firmware with your custom fonts. But being able to load it to the SD card is literally a 10-minute job, just to make a few edits and save the MCM, use the script MCM to bin Python script to convert that to a bin file, then stick the bin file on the SD card. That's why I keep making these little tweaks and minor changes and getting it set up the way I like it to look. But as far as like I say, when I share this file, it'll just be like font0.bin, and just stick that on the root of your SD card, and If you already had the default font selected, it'll automatically load it. If not, just go and select the first font in the list, and it will select that one. Or if you want to replace the second font, name it font 1. Or if you want to replace the third font, then just name it font 2.bin and select that one in Orduplane, and it'll be there. It'll load it at boot. Looks like the sugarcane actually got a fair bit of wind damage out here. One of our recent storms. You see some of it's all kind of knocked down, laying down out here. And just this edge of the field out here, which is kind of weird. So now I think we're gonna fly this tree line here. If we fly to the far corner of this little cut to where the tall trees start again, that should be roughly 2 miles out, if I remember right. That was kind of my 2-mile waypoint, or landmark rather, when I was playing around with some waypoint missions before. One of my missions flew straight up this this line here, and that should put you right at 2 miles when you get to that far corner right over here. And we're rolling over on 2 miles in just a second. There we go, right at that corner like expected. I want to go see what this other kind of clearing, this lane they've cleared out here is in the woods. I don't remember it being that big and open out here before. I see another clearing straight ahead. We might kind of cruise out to that one. I see this other lane ends kind of here. We might follow it on the way back and see where it goes. And I'm guessing there's some trails that'll leave off of that. But that's hunting club is what all that is out here. See, I actually think, if I remember right, this is the area that they cleared recently during the summer months. That one kind of tall tree there on the corner that they left. Or maybe this is not the clearing. I thought it was, because there was another road. Yeah, I guess it is. There was a road coming in from this way. This is the road I remember. They built a road out here coming in, and I don't remember it going any further that way. I guess it just goes to right there and stops. But yeah, they built this roadway out here and cleared this area. Right here. But this other roadway leaving away from it wasn't there, from what I remember. Yeah, you see we're sitting on like 22 minutes right now, and we're just over, well, just under 2200 milliamp hours. So we should be sitting right at 30 minutes when we get to 3000 milliamp hours, which is kind of where I like to land with these batteries, being an 18650 3500 milliamp hour pack. You have to push it down pretty far to get that full 3500 out. I usually tend to kind of hit home around 3000, 3200, something like that. So this lane that we wanted to look at should be right here. We're just about to cross it, so we'll turn and get on it. Or we'll fly a little bit north of it anyway, so we can kind of look over the nose a little bit down into it and follow it and see where it goes. Yeah, I'm definitely pretty happy with the way it's cruising right now. It's cruising a lot more efficient than it was. And having that dampening on the TCS throttle loop seems to have smoothed my throttle out quite a bit. And it could just be because it's a smoother day with less wind. It's more calm than it was. That could be why it's not surging throttle as much to fight the wind. But it definitely seems to do everything I want it to do right now. There's a little clearing kind of under us. I thought it was going to shoot off to the side. I guess it was just a little spot off the side of that roadway there. But yeah, that little lane I was following, it's going to kind of run back into another road that will run out to the corner of that field right out there, if I remember right. I think. See, I want to follow this and see where it goes. It's probably going to run out to the corner of this field. I don't want to get too far downwind right now. Make sure we have enough to get back home. We are flying more efficient, but we're also flying slower. But that doesn't matter. I mean, it will take us longer to get home, but we'll still get home more efficiently and use less battery to get there. So it's the important thing. I kind of like flying slower anyway. It gives me more time in the air, more time to have fun flying. There's another little clearing right out there. Looks like either a feeder or a deer stand or something in the clearing there. If I had to guess, that's probably a feeder, and there's going to be a stand off on the side somewhere. Alright, so I guess we're going to kind of start heading home. But we at least want to make it out over these woods, back over the open fields, to make sure that even if the battery doesn't get us home, we'll be able to land out in the open field with minimal damage and be able to go recover the airplane later. But I'm pretty sure we're going to make it home. But even just say right now, if I had a motor go out or wire broke or something like that, or speed controller died or something, if I lost power right now, I'm not sure I would actually be able to glide to the nearest spot, which would be right out in that direction. I think would be the closest way to get out of the tall trees, but that would still put me into that weeded area that's quite overgrown. Might do better to head for that direction. But yeah, I don't think I would make it. I mean, we would make it now, but I don't think we would have made it before. That's actually the cow pasture coming up right here. A couple of road cars on the roadway there. But yeah, I'm not really concerned about losing the airplane. I mean, if I lost power, it might go down in the woods, and it may take me a long time to find it if I ever did find it. But just the airplane itself would be the only thing at risk. But the only reason I was even in that state of mind, kind of pointing that stuff out, I was watching some ultralight videos recently. Some guys flying out, and they were talking about flying safely in two-stroke motors and their relative unreliability compared to four-stroke motors that were running two-stroke Rotax on the ones I was watching. And they were talking about that you need to always be prepared for an engine failure and just always have a way out, have an open field or something within reach and in your plan, and once you overfly that field, have the next one picked out. You know, just always have a backup plan. And that's just kind of what I was thinking about while I was out over that wooded area flying somewhat low like that, that if I lost power out there, I don't think I would make it out to an open field to make for an easier recovery. But that's kind of the beauty of flying these low FPV planes like that. We have minimal risk, just a little bit of financial loss and time to rebuild it if I wanted to replace it. You're not actually gonna kill yourself if you land out in the woods out there, like you might do in an ultralight. I'm guessing these vehicles are both going to turn across that bridge there, because if not, that'll put them on a dead-end course down onto the road that we live on, and there's nothing out here but our house and a neighbor's house, and I don't recognize either vehicle unless maybe the second one might be the neighbor's truck, but no, they both turned over the bridge as expected. So I guess we'll follow the road, or the road and the bayou rather, back home, and pretty sure we can make our 30-minute goal. And there's that truck, by the way, that was out here. I think that's a gravel truck. They've been hauling gravel out, building loading sites, getting ready to cut that sugar cane. I was just wondering if that was more gravel or if they were actually one of the trucks out here to haul the sugar cane out, if they were actually started to harvest it or not. Airplane's getting kind of bumped around a little bit right now. You notice it's reading also a 4.6 mile an hour tailwind that we didn't have previously. So it's probably just variable wind changing direction and speed and stuff out here. Yeah, we've already hit 29 minutes and I'm pretty sure we'll be at 30 minutes by the time we get back to the house, and well under our 30 amp hour, 3000 milliamp hours used out of the battery. I'm pretty happy with the changes we made to get that efficient cruise, which is something I mentioned on pretty much all the previous flights. Once I switched over to Orduplane and started tuning things, I knew my cruise configuration was not as efficient as it should be. And like I said, I was going to revisit that later, and here we are. And we definitely got it down where I want it. And the airplane's flying really good and navigating good, and the as far as the video system, as far as the power goes, everything looks good, clean, no road noise in the video and all that, but still not happy with the Hybrid 1 camera, this one anyway. I actually intended to update the firmware in the analog camera. I was going to change it to the Swift style firmware, but I never could get it to work. I just kind of played around with that a little bit this morning before I flew today, but I was never able to get that to work, but I'll try to revisit that later and see if I can. So I'm actually going to switch to fly-by-wire here.
Fly-by-wire A.
And start cutting some power. And we're going to set up an approach and a landing from this direction. And you see now we're showing a 5 mile an hour headwind, which is going to be a crosswind on landing. I was actually kind of accounting for that tailwind that I saw on the way back home right there. Why I want it to come and land from this direction, but it's showing a crosswind now, but that's still fine. I still prefer to land from this direction when we have a crosswind anyway. It gives me a little bit more runway to work with before overshooting and landing past the shed. As you can see here, it gives me time to come in a little faster and smoother, like so. Switch to manual and taxi back to the shop. So I hope you enjoy this flight, this video, and like I said, I'll put a link to that font file below for the one guy that asked for it and anyone else that might want to try it. Or just a brief reminder how to install it. You literally just place it on the root of the SD card and select the corresponding font number in Mission Planner, and it should load it when the flight controller boots. So I guess I'll take the time to thank you all for watching the video. I'll go ahead and disarm.
Disarmed.
And of course, to all my Patreon pledges and channel members, the monetary contributions that you make allow me to keep doing all this, and hopefully it's helpful. So I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for watching this one.